Most people got married in June because they took their yearly bath in May and were still smelling pretty good by June. However, by then they were starting to smell, so brides carried a bouquet of flowers to hide the BO. Baths in the not-too-distant past equaled a big tub filled with hot water. The man of the house had the privilege of bathing first in nice, warm, clean water. Next came all the sons, and then all of the other men in the household. Then came the women and finally the children. Last of all, the babies. Everyone used the same tub of bath water. After everyone had bathed, the water was so dirty you could actually lose someone in it. Hence the saying, "Don't throw the baby out with the bath water." Many years ago, most houses had thatched roofs. The roofs were made of thick straw, piled high, with no wood support underneath the thatch. Those thatch roofs were the only place for animals to get warm during cold weather. So all of the household pets, dogs, cats, etc., as well as mice and bugs, lived in the roof. When it rained, the roof became slippery, and sometimes these pets and varmints would slip and fall off the roof. Hence the saying, "It's raining cats and dogs." There was a time many years ago when many houses had dirt floors. During that time period, only the wealthy had floors not made of dirt, hence the saying, "dirt poor." The wealthy of society had slate floors in their houses, which would get slippery in the winter when wet. So they spread thresh on the floor to help keep their footing. As the winter wore on, they kept adding more thresh until when someone opened the door, it would all start falling outside. So a piece of wood was placed at the door entryway, hence a threshold. They cooked in the kitchen in a big kettle that always hung over the fire. Every day they lit the fire and added whatever consumables they had to the pot. However, they mostly ate vegetables as they didn't have much meat. Each day they would eat whatever kind of the stew they had concocted for supper, leaving the leftovers in the pot to get cold overnight. Next day they would follow the same routine. Sometimes the stew had food in it that had been in there for a month. Hence the rhyme, peas porridge hot, peas porridge cold, peas porridge in the pot 9 days old. Sometimes poor people could obtain pork and would feel really blessed when that happened. When guests came to visit them, they would bring out some bacon and hang it on the mantle to show it off. Doing that was a sign of wealth and showed to everyone that a man could really bring home the bacon. Oftentimes they would cut off a little slice to share with their guests, and they would all sit around and chew the fat. People that had money ate off of plates made of pewter. Food with a high acid content caused some of the lead in the pewter to leach onto the food. This happened most often with tomatoes, so they stopped eating tomatoes for 400 years. Most people didn't have pewter plates but had trenchers, which was a piece of wood with the middle scooped out like a bowl. Trenchers were never washed, and a lot of times worms got into the wood. After eating off wormy trenchers, folks would get trench mouth. Bread was divided according to status. Workers got the burnt bottom of the loaf, the family got the middle, and guests got the top or the upper crust. Lead cups were used to drink ale or whiskey. Too much of either could sometimes knock a greedy partaker out for a couple of days. Oftentimes these impaired partakers would be staggering along the road, and they would pass out, thereby displaying the appearance of being dead. Sometimes a passerby would see them lying prone, appearing to be dead, and have them moved to be prepared for burial. These assumed dead were usually laid on a kitchen table for a couple of days, while family and friends gathered to eat, drink, and wait to see if the person would wake up. Hence the custom of holding a wake began. England is an old, small country. Many years ago, it began to run out of places to bury people in its cemeteries. So to remedy that situation, coffins were dug up from old graves and the corpses in them removed and disposed of. After the old corpses were disposed of, recently deceased individuals in new coffins were buried in the newly empty grave. However, in digging up and reopening these coffins, it was discovered that 1 out of every 25 coffins was found to have scratch marks on the inside of it. Horrified, the people cleaning out the old graves realized that some people had mistakenly been buried alive. The so-called fix to that situation was to tie a string on the wrist of the deceased and pass up to it through the coffin, then up through the ground and tie it to a bell. Someone stayed nearby during the day, sitting out in the graveyard listening for the bell. Someone else would arrive at nightfall to listen for the bell to ring. This nighttime shift became known as the graveyard shift, and if they heard the bell ring, they would immediately know that someone was saved by the bell, with that person being called a dead ringer.